All right, now that you've seen Punnett squares being used by the amoeba sisters and you've kind of got some definitions under your belt, let's go through an example. So with this one, we're looking at two what we call heterozygotes. So these are two um, parent organisms that are both heterozygous. And the particular trait that we're going to be looking at is big toe length. And this actually is a real human trait, and it's regulated by largely one gene, and there are two alleles. One of the alleles is dominant, and it causes the person to have a long big toe, and so we'll use a capital T to symbolize that allele. The other allele is recessive, and it ends up this would cause the organism to have a short big toe, and we'll use a lowercase t for that. So remember, these recessive alleles, what they really do is just sort of nothing. So basically, your big toe will be shorter if nothing changes that. In this case, the dominant allele changes it. Since we're looking at two heterozygotes, the male parent here would be um, heterozygous for the big toe length gene. It would have two copies of the allele, one dominant and one recessive. The female parent would also be heterozygous, one dominant and one recessive. When we construct the Punnett square, we show that the male parent will produce gametes with either the dominant or the recessive allele, and the female parent will produce um, gametes with either the dominant or the recessive allele. The resulting possible offspring could either be homozygous dominant, and that will happen about 25% of the time, homozygous recessive, that will happen about 25% of the time, or heterozygous, and that will happen about 50% of the time. Quarter of the time, it'll be heterozygous because it gets the dominant allele from the female parent, and a quarter of the time, it'll be heterozygous because it gets the dominant allele from the male parent. And these are the genotypes. The genotypes are either homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, or heterozygous. Those three genotypes will result in only two phenotypes. Any organism that has at least one copy of the long big toe allele, the dominant allele, will have big toes that are longer than the other toes. The only way that you will show the recessive trait is if you are homozygous recessive and you have two recessive alleles for that big toe length trait.